Chapter 22. Concerning literary debates and the formation of an unexpected salon. The emerald satin caught the light like water, flowing over Carrie's skin as she smoothed the fabric against her hip. In the cabin's bathroom mirror, she barely recognized herself. The dress wasn't new. She'd worn it to gallery openings back home, to awards ceremonies where her photographs were displayed in polished frames far from the dusty places they'd been taken. But tonight, the dress felt different. She felt different wearing it. Like an actress donning her costume for opening night, stepping into the leading role.
Wear something that makes you feel powerful,
Crispin had said. She hadn't understood then what he'd meant. Now, turning to check the back, watching the fabric shimmer with each movement, she thought she did. It wasn't about impressing others or meeting some invisible standard. It was about armor. About walking into a room and knowing you belonged there, even when part of you feared you didn't. She'd pinned her hair up in a loose arrangement that suggested she'd simply gathered it casually, though in reality, it had taken 20 minutes of careful work. A touch of lipstick, darker than she'd usually wear. The silver pendant her grandfather had given her grandmother, passed down after she'd died. The knock at the door came precisely at 7. She slipped on her heels, took a breath, and opened it. Crispin stood in the corridor, transformed. The rumpled academic was gone, replaced by something from another era, a character lifted straight from the pages of a classic novel. His dinner jacket fit perfectly across his shoulders, white shirt crisp against the black wool, a bow tie knotted with the casual grace of a man who'd been tying them since boyhood. His hair was smoothed back, and he'd had a fresh shave. But it was his eyes that stopped her, the way they widened as they took her in, travelling from her face to the emerald fabric and back again.
Carrie.
He said, her name almost a sigh.
You are extraordinary.
She felt herself blush, the warmth blooming under her skin like a held breath finally released. This was a moment of genuine reaction, she thought. A sincere response that couldn't be scripted even in this elaborately choreographed evening. You scrub up pretty well yourself, Professor. His mouth quirked in that half-smile she was coming to know so well.
Shall we?
He asked, offering his arm. She took it, her hand settling into the crook of his elbow, the fine wool of his jacket smooth beneath her fingers. As they walked to the lift, she was acutely aware of other passengers noticing them. The subtle double takes, the quick glances away, like minor characters in the background, playing their part in establishing the scene. They were a couple tonight, at least in the eyes of strangers. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. The steakhouse was on deck 2, tucked away beside the lofty grand lobby that had impressed Carrie from the moment she boarded. Crispin stopped the lift at deck 3, however, and arm in arm they descended one of those elegant curving staircases. A fantasy moment. Carrie glanced at Crispin, the perfect timeless English gentleman, and he winked back.
I don't normally like to take second place, but tonight, I'm just the guy beside the leading lady.
As they entered the steakhouse, Carrie could see why Crispin had chosen it. Unlike the grand sweeping spaces of the main restaurants, this was a jewel box. Dark woods, subdued lighting, tables arranged for privacy rather than spectacle. A string quartet played in the corner, their notes floating above the gentle murmur of conversation and the delicate clink of crystal and silver. The setting was impeccable, as if designed by an exacting production designer for a film about shipboard romance. The maitre d' greeted them with a small bow.
Dr. Shrike, your table is ready. Please follow me.
He led them to a corner table partially screened by an ornate wooden partition. It offered a view of the room while maintaining a sense of seclusion, perfect for observing without being constantly observed. As she sat, Carrie noticed that everyone was in formal wear, men in black and white, women in a rainbow of evening gowns. It was another time, a scene from a film where dressing for dinner was a ritual, not an inconvenience. Her photographer's eye catalogued the subtle social hierarchies visible even in this rarefied setting. The elderly couple who didn't speak but whose movements were perfectly synchronized after decades together. The younger woman, with careful posture and a strained smile, clearly dining with her husband's business associates rather than by choice. The silver-haired man at a corner table who carried himself with the unmistakable air of wealth so old, he never needed to mention it. Crispin sat across from her, his face softened by candlelight. A waiter appeared silently, filling their water glasses, presenting menus, laying napkins on laps with smooth efficiency. She barely heard him, too caught in the strangeness of the moment. Yesterday morning, she'd been alone in her cabin, nursing a coffee and a sense of isolation. Now she was here, in a gown, with a man who looked at her like she was the only person in the room.
Wine?
Crispin asked, scanning the list. Red, I think. Something full-bodied.
My thoughts exactly.
He ordered a Barossa Valley Shiraz, then turned his attention back to her.
You were a revelation today.
He said quietly. I thought that was your line, she replied, remembering his speech at the workshop. All that talk about my storytelling potential.
I meant every word.
The sommelier arrived with their wine, performing the ritual of presentation, uncorking, and pouring a taste for Crispin. She watched, appreciating the theatre of it, the careful dance of service that elevated mere consumption to ceremony. He nodded his approval, and their glasses were filled. Carrie took a sip, letting the rich, spiced warmth of it coat her tongue.
To new voices.
Crispin said, raising his glass.
And old stories told in new ways.
She clinked her glass against his. I'm not sure I'm ready to declare myself a writer just yet.
And yet you're thinking about it.
He smiled over the rim of his glass.
I can practically see you framing the chapters in your head. The way you looked during Maeve's talk, like someone had just handed you a key to a door you hadn't noticed before.
She couldn't deny it. The idea had taken root, growing with unexpected speed. I've always seen stories in fragments, she admitted. A face in a crowd, a moment of connection. My job is capturing those moments, freezing them in time. But the stories behind them, the lives those moments are part of, those have always stayed with me.
That's what makes a writer,
He said.
the inability to let go of those fragments until you've made sense of them.
Their entrees arrived. Seared scallops for her, a delicate mushroom tart for him. The scallops were perfect, caramelized on the outside, barely translucent within, a testament to the chef's art. As they ate, the conversation flowed into unexpected channels.
What makes a great story?
Crispin asked, carefully cutting into his tart.
Not a good one, a great one. The kind that stays with you long after you've put the book down or left the cinema.
Carrie considered, savouring a bite of scallop. Truthfulness, she said finally. Not facts necessarily, but emotional truth. When you recognise something about yourself or the world that you've always known but never been able to articulate.
Precisely.
He nodded enthusiastically, a hint of the animated academic breaking through the polished dinner companion.
It's why Star Wars and The Lord of the Rings resonate so deeply despite their fantastical settings. They tap into archetypal truths, the reluctant hero, the corrupting influence of power, the found family. We recognize ourselves in the struggles, even if we've never held a lightsaber or walked through Middle-earth.
I've always loved how those stories make the impossible seem real, Carrie said, watching as the waiter cleared their plates away. All those details, the languages Tolkien created, the way Lucas built an entire universe with its own technology and politics. You can almost believe they exist somewhere. Their main courses arrived. A perfectly cooked filet mignon for him, wild salmon for her. The presentation was artistic, the portions generous but not overwhelming. Crispin cut into his steak, the knife slicing through the meat with hardly any pressure. The sommelier reappeared to top up their wine glasses.
What about literary fiction?
He asked, returning to their conversation.
What makes Pride and Prejudice a masterpiece rather than just a girlish fantasy?
Voice. Carrie answered without hesitation, gathering a forkful of salmon. The way Austen captures Elizabeth's perspective, her moral confusion, her growth, you can't separate the story from the telling of it. Crispin's face lit up.
Exactly, and that's why Elizabeth Bennet endures as one of literature's most beloved heroines. It's not just her wit or her independence, though those are part of it. It's that Austen allows us to see the world through her eyes, to experience her prejudices and her awakening. We're not observing her. We're living with her. She's a brilliant observer,
Crispin continued, reaching for his wine.
who is initially blind to her own heart. Her perception, which she prides herself on, fails her when it comes to what matters most.
Carrie felt a pang of recognition at those words. A brilliant observer, blind to her own heart. It could be her own epitaph. How many moments had she captured? How many emotions had she documented? All while keeping herself safely behind the lens. As they talked, she felt a current running beneath their words, an understanding that went beyond the texts they discussed. This wasn't just literary analysis, it was a mapping of their own connection, the recognition of shared values, shared perspectives. Each book, each character, was a point of reference in the geography of who they were to each other. The string quartet shifted to a waltz, something stately and elegant that seemed to float above the chatter of the dining room. Crispin glanced toward the sound, then back at her.
Would you care to dance?
He asked.
The Queen's Room should be in full swing by now.
I haven't waltzed since... Actually, I'm not sure I ever have, she admitted.
It's just walking in circles with better posture.
He said, eyes twinkling.
Trust me.
There was that phrase again. Trust me. And the strange thing was, she did. They finished their dinner with shared profiteroles, light and airy with dark chocolate sauce. As they left the restaurant, Crispin's hand settled at the small of her back, a gesture that was both protective and possessive. The touch sent a current through her, a reminder of the night before, of what would likely come after this evening of public performance. They moved from the intimate, darkened chamber of the restaurant into what felt like the next act of their perfectly constructed evening. The Queen's Room was magnificent, a ballroom straight from another century. Crystal chandeliers hung from an ornate ceiling, their light reflecting off the polished dance floor. The ship's orchestra played on a raised stage, their formal attire matching the elegant crowd who moved across the floor or sat at small tables around the perimeter. This was the scene where the music would swell and the camera would pull back, revealing the hero and heroine at the center of their glittering world. And yet, as Crispin led her to the floor, it was actually happening. His hand took hers, his other hand settling lightly at her waist.
Just follow my lead.
He whispered.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
She expected to stumble, to feel awkward and exposed. Instead, she found herself moving with unexpected grace, guided by his confident steps. He was right. It was just walking in circles, but transformed by music into something transcendent. They turned slowly around the floor, part of the swirling constellation of couples.
You're a natural,
He said, his voice low, just for her. I have a good partner. His eyes held hers, the glittering room, the other dancers, the music itself. It all seemed to blur at the edges, leaving only his gaze in sharp, impossible focus. There was only the music, the warmth of his hand at her waist, and the knowledge that, for tonight at least, they were exactly where they were meant to be. They danced 2 more waltzes before Crispin suggested a change of venue.
I've arranged something special.
He said, guiding her from the ballroom.
If you're not too tired.
Not even close, she assured him. And so, they moved into what Carrie could only think of as the exclusive third act, the private scene where confidences are shared and revelations made. The elevator lifted them to a space marked Grill's Lounge. A uniformed attendant stood at the entrance, checking key cards.
This is normally reserved for Queen and Princess Grill guests.
Crispin explained quietly.
But I've made arrangements.
The attendant smiled as they approached.
Dr. Shrike, good evening. And this must be Miss Watson?
It is indeed.
Crispin confirmed.
Please, come in. Your table is ready.
The lounge was less crowded than the Queen's room, its atmosphere more intimate. Small groups sat in plush armchairs, engaged in conversation over cocktails or nightcaps. Carrie recognised several faces from the literary festival. Maeve Penhaligon, chatting with a silver-haired man she didn't know. Alexander McCall Smith, nodding thoughtfully as a woman in a spectacular red gown spoke animatedly. Their table was in a corner with a view of the dark sea through floor-to-ceiling windows. A bottle of champagne waited in an ice bucket. The lighting was cinematic, soft and golden, flattering every face it touched. "You've thought of everything," Carrie said as they settled into their seats.
Not everything,
Crispin replied.
but I wanted tonight to be special.
The champagne was poured, bubbles racing to the surface like tiny shooting stars. Carrie took a sip, the cold effervescence a perfect counterpoint to the warm glow she felt inside.
Crispin, I thought that was you.
Maeve Penhaligon approached their table, resplendent in a sapphire blue gown, her scarf replaced by a strand of pearls.
And Carrie, how lovely to see you again.
Please join us.
Crispin said, standing to pull out a chair for her.
Just for a moment. I don't want to intrude on your evening.
Maeve sat, her eyes taking in the champagne, the intimate setting, reading the situation with the quick perception of a novelist used to observing human behaviour.
I was just telling Anthony about your Cameron project, Crispin. He's quite interested.
I'd be happy to discuss it with him,
Crispin said.
though I'm still finding my way with it.
After today's workshop, I think you're on the right track.
Maeve said, turning to include Carrie.
And you, my dear, I hope you're letting those ideas percolate. No rushing into it.
"I'm trying to take your advice," Carrie said, "though it's not easy when the ideas keep bubbling up." Maeve laughed.
That's how you know it's right, when the story won't leave you alone.
The silver-haired man, Anthony presumably, wandered over, and soon Alexander McCall Smith joined them as well. Another chair was brought, then another, and suddenly their intimate table for two had transformed into a literary salon. The denouement of their evening had taken an unexpected turn, populated by supporting characters who threatened to steal the scene.
We were just discussing the art of storytelling.
Crispin explained to the newcomers.
What makes a narrative endure?
Authenticity.
Said Anthony.
Even in the most fantastical setting, there must be emotional truth.
And clarity.
Alexander added, his voice gentle but authoritative.
One must never confuse the reader, even when exploring complex ideas.
The conversation flowed like the champagne, refilled by attentive staff who seemed to materialise whenever a glass threatened to empty. Carrie found herself speaking up more than she'd expected, drawing on her visual sensibility to discuss how stories created images in the mind.
It's why I've always loved Patrick O'Brien's Aubrey Maturin series.
Crispin said, his enthusiasm making him gesture a bit too emphatically with his glass. A splash of champagne escaped, landing on the tablecloth. He hardly noticed, continuing,
20 novels of such vivid detail that you can smell the salt air and feel the pitch of the deck beneath your feet. I've read the entire series 7 times, and I still find new treasures with each reading. There's a moment in The Fortune of War where Maturin is sewing up a wounded sailor's leg and simultaneously planning an intelligence operation, and the way O'Brien literally weaves those two threads together without a single false note is simply...
He trailed off, suddenly aware of everyone's amused expressions.
Well, I could go on all night, but I suspect that would be tedious.
Not at all.
Alexander said kindly.
Enthusiasm is never tedious.
Jane Austen Goes to Sea.
Crispin said, more concisely.
All that precise social observation transplanted to the wooden world of naval vessels.
Perhaps, darling,
Maeve said with a smile.
but I doubt even Austen could have captured the particular melancholy of men cooped up in a ship for 3 years. It's a man's world, that naval one, with its own codes and hierarchies. Austen was brilliant at the drawing room, but the gun deck is a different country entirely.
That's a fair point.
Crispin conceded.
Though I'd argue that the ship itself functions as a kind of drawing room, with its rigid social structures and enforced proximity.
It's a delicate balance.
Maeve continued, shifting the conversation slightly.
As historical novelists, we're constantly walking the tightrope between fidelity to the facts and freedom to create compelling fiction. Lean too far one way, and you've written a textbook. Too far the other, and you've created a costume drama that could be set in any period.
How do you manage it? Carrie asked. Finding that balance. Maeve considered.
I immerse myself in the research, absorb everything I can about the period and place. Then, when I actually write, I try to forget it all, let it filter through naturally rather than constantly checking facts. The story has to come first.
But surely there are limits, Anthony argued. Historical events that can't be changed, realities of the time that must be acknowledged.
Of course,
Crispin said.
but within those boundaries there's still room for imagination, for asking what if, and why not.
As they debated, Carrie found her mind wandering to her own nascent project. She'd been thinking of it as non-fiction, a collection of true stories about real people she'd met. But what if she took a different approach? What if she used those real encounters as inspiration for fictional characters, placing them in situations that highlighted their essence without being bound by the literal facts of their lives? She could take the young lawyer in New Mexico and imagine him 10 years in the future, having won his water rights case, or the Iranian tour guide, following her through a day that never happened but could have, revealing truths about her life that went beyond what Carrie had actually witnessed. Fiction would give her freedom, structure, the ability to shape narrative arcs for maximum impact rather than being constrained by the messiness of reality. If Austen could guide Elizabeth Bennet's journey to a satisfying emotional truth, couldn't she do the same? She didn't have to be a journalist reporting on the lawyer in New Mexico. She could be a novelist, building a world around him, guiding him through challenges that revealed his character.
You're very quiet, Carrie.
Alexander observed.
Has our literary debate overwhelmed you?
She smiled. Not at all. I'm just processing, thinking about how these ideas might apply to my own work.
The photographer's eye applied to narrative.
He said.
I would very much like to read that book when it's written.
The conversation continued, winding through favourite authors and memorable scenes, the challenges of getting the details right without sacrificing the story's flow. Carrie contributed occasionally, but mostly she absorbed, watching Crispin in his element, seeing how he seemed to light up from within when discussing the books he loved. This was a different side of him than she'd seen before. Not the guarded lecturer from that first talk, nor the vulnerable man who'd responded to her question with unexpected honesty, nor even the lover who'd held her in his bed. This was Crispin the enthusiast, passionate and articulate, his academic training enhancing rather than constraining his genuine love of literature. Midnight came and went. Slowly, the group began to disperse. Alexander was the first to leave, citing a book he had to finish.
Writing, that is.
Anthony followed soon after. Maeve lingered a moment longer.
It's been a pleasure.
She said, squeezing Carrie's hand.
And remember what I said. Let the ideas simmer. You'll know when it's time to write.
When they were alone again, Crispin looked at Carrie across the table, his eyes soft in the low light.
I hope that wasn't too much,
He said.
I didn't anticipate quite such a literary discussion.
It was wonderful, she assured him. Like auditing the world's most enjoyable tutorial. He laughed.
Hardly that formal, I hope.
He glanced around the now quiet lounge.
Shall we call it a night?
The question hung between them, laden with unspoken meaning. They both knew what calling it a night entailed, where they would go, and what would happen when they got there. They had reached the denouement of their evening's narrative, the quiet walk after the climax, leading to the inevitable, intimate conclusion. "Yes," she said simply. They walked together through the quiet corridors of the ship, her arm linked through his. The hour was late enough that they encountered few other passengers, though those they did pass gave them the quick, appraising glances reserved for a new and intriguing pairing. A beautiful woman in an evening gown and a distinguished man in a dinner jacket, walking arm in arm after midnight. The implications were clear. Carrie found she didn't mind. For tonight at least, she was allowing herself this fantasy, this perfect interlude between the life she'd left behind in Sydney and the one she would return to in a few days. Tomorrow she would worry about consequences. Tonight was for living in the moment. They reached his cabin door. Crispin slid his keycard into the lock, pushed the door open, then stepped back, gesturing for her to enter first.
"After you."
He said quietly. She stepped across the threshold, the emerald satin of her gown catching the light one last time before the heavy door closed, sealing them away from the public world of the ship.